Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to our next webinar for the Wade Church Leadership Training. We're going to be talking about communication styles in leadership. This particular webinar series is very near and dear to my heart. There's a lot that goes into it, and I'm really excited to have this journey with you all. My name is Sister Paula Glover, and I work with the leaders here at the Wade Church. I'll throw up my contact information a little bit later. So let's go ahead and let's jump in and chat a little bit about communication styles in leadership. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about what is communication, why is it important. We're going to look at temperament versus influence and task-oriented versus people-oriented folks. We're also going to talk about the DISC profile and assessment. All of you have received an email from me with a link to your personal DISC assessment. Let me do a little bit of a disclaimer right now. This assessment is in no way a psychological evaluation. Sis does not have anything beyond her name that gives me the right to psychologically evaluate you. It's not trying to get in your head. This is just looking at your personality and behavior tendencies. Also, the assessment should take you 10 to 15 minutes tops to complete. And then we're going to have some questions, and things of that nature that you can begin to send over to me because I will share my contact information. So when we talk about communication, I think it's very, very important for us to begin at ground zero, okay? So when I talk about communication, what I'm speaking about there is, and I'm a little bit of a nerd for those of you that don't know, I love to look up words, phrases, etc. So when I look up the word communication, I saw this definition: the imparting or exchanging of information or news. So that means that it's not just you talking to people, but it's people talking back to you. And then when we think about that a little bit further, it does not necessarily have to be verbal. It can be nonverbal. It can be a head nod. It could be I love, that's one of my favorite sounds to make, etc., along with words. Now, another definition of communication is a means of sending or receiving information, like telephone lines or computers. When I think about this, I think about social media. I think about our webinars. I think about snail mail for the post office. I think about faxing back in the day. So all of those are a part of communication. So then why is communication even important? Well, as a leader, you have to have communication skills. I think when we talked about maybe earlier this year, we were looking at what are some good personality characteristics of a person to make them a good leader. And you all came back with communication skills. So it's important for you as a leader to know your communication style as well as understanding the style of others so that you're able to flex in order to get your point across, but also educate people on how best to impart wisdom to you. So as a leader, it's important for you to have good communication skills because that is how you kind of give your team your vision and your goals. I talk about our pastor all the time, Dr. McCrae, and he is excellent at imparting what is the vision of the church and what are the goals of the church. And he is able to do that in such a way where people understand it. You have to keep in mind, too, that when we talk about vision and goals, right, that means not only being able to verbalize it, but that also means to be able to utilize different forms of media in order to get that point across. Also, communication is important because of motivation. You are motivating your team members. I was going to our church, about 5 years, 6 years now. I've been saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost most of my life. I am deeply motivated during call to worship because the motivation that our pastor and other pastors that ministers that have been in our church, it just makes me feel some type of way where I'm just like, I want to join church again just because of that motivation of their communication. I also think about, sports or coaches. And with football, I remember when my son was in football and he was at a game and I was in the sidelines, because that's what I do, watching the game. And the coach gave this speech and I for real thought I could put on some pads and get out there and win the game. So that is part of the communication skills. It's also, being demonstrative helps to motivate, utilizing of your hands, smiling, things of that nature. And then having good communication, or why communication is important, is that it allows your team or your ministry to see and hear what is expected of them. I will tell a story. I consider it my home church. When we lived in Atlanta, we attended a church called Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church. It's a wonderful church. It was considered a mega church, had about between 17 and 19,000 members of the church, but you would never know that the way our pastor was. Very personal man, Pastor Dr. William Shields, and he went by Papa Shields. And so as we were getting acclimated to the church, I had someone approach me about the greeting and usher ministry. And I was like, they were so motivating. And I was like, yes, this is it. I'm going to be a part of this ministry. No one really talked to me about the expectations. So comes second Sunday, I get this phone call and they're like, this is your Sunday. So you're going to stand in the front part, in the entryway of the church, and you're going to greet people and give them a hug and say hello. I was like, what? I just thought I would stand around and just point people where to go and look cute. The expectation was that I was going to have to talk to people and hug people. And for those of you that know me, I am very much not a hugger. And so, but the Lord is working on me. I'm working through my own issues there. But that was a case of not getting the expectations over to me as a new member of the ministry. So therefore, I was joining something based off of emotion and not based off the fact whether or not I could fulfill the duties in the ministry. So let's dig a little bit deeper into communication styles and communication, because you have to understand your communication style in order to effectively communicate with your team, and then vice versa. So when we talk about types of communicators, etc., I want to look at introverts and extroverts. So before we jump in and determine where you fit on the discontinuum and things of that nature, all of those things, it's important that you understand active or passive roles. Active or passive roles helps you to identify your specific temperament type. So when I talk about active or passive, I don't like those words as much. I like to look at it as active means extrovert, passive means introvert. So when we look at extrovert and introvert, let's break it down a little bit further. So when I say an introvert is often thought of as a person that is quiet, reserved, and thoughtful. They do not seek out special attention or social engagements, as these can leave introverts feeling exhausted and drained, okay? Introverts are the exact opposite of extroverts. So again, introverts are folks that are kind of to themselves, quiet, reserved. They're also the people that when they speak, it is so powerful because you know that is well thought out. So to give you an example, I want to put anybody on the spot. Our First Lady, Lady Robin McCray, is an excellent example of an introvert. She's quiet, reserved, takes her a minute to kind of get in there. She likes to be behind the scenes. Those all describe her to a T. On the flip side, let's talk extrovert. So an extrovert is a person whose motives and actions are directed outward. So extroverts are more prone to action than contemplation. So they're going to think before they act. They make friends readily and adjust easily to social situations. Also, extroverts generally show warm interest in their surroundings. So I'm going to give y'all a wild guess on who is an extrovert that I'm going to use as an example. Ta-da! Our pastor, Dr. Ricky McCray. He is an excellent example of an extrovert. I have never seen this man meet a stranger. He will talk to every and anybody, and that gives him energy. That excites him. That motivates him. For introverts, meeting new people or being in those huge social surroundings, we have to go take a nap. Quarantine time has been awesome for our introverts. Our extroverts have kind of struggled a little bit. So when we're talking about temperament, just to circle things up and tidy it up, temperament is looking at active and passive. Active means extrovert. Passive means introvert. Introverts are quiet, reserved, and thoughtful individuals. Extroverts are people whose motives and actions are directed outward. They move to action, they make friends easily, etc. So now that we looked at introverted versus extroverted, let's talk about task-oriented versus people-oriented. So another part of your personality is how you look at influence or categories of influence. So the categories of influence are task-oriented and people-oriented. So let's talk task-oriented. So task-oriented means doing whatever it takes to get the job done, whatever that is. This approach tends to be autocratic. So it's a person that rules with absolute power and emphasizes completing tasks required to meet the goals of your organization, your ministry, etc. Let me do a small caveat here. Introvert, extrovert, task-oriented, people-oriented, none of these are the best ones. They just are. You are what you are. There's not a bad personality behavior. There's not the best personality or a good personality behavior. It's learning how to embrace exactly who you are and learning how to navigate knowing those things. So let me just say that. So again, we're talking about influence. We just talked about task-oriented, which means doing whatever it takes to get the job done. These approach tends to be autocratic, meaning a person that rules with absolute power and emphasizes completing tasks required to meet organizational goals. People-oriented means being very, very focused on relationships and people, fully invested in others, and loves to talk and chat people up. So these are the folks, again, never meet a stranger. I think of Dr. McCray. When I think of task-oriented, I think of Deacon Irie. He works within the finance ministry, and so it's very, very important for him to be task-oriented because things have to be exactly right. Or Brother Ramon is another great example of task-oriented. He's an accountant, so he is responsible for things turning out correctly. And in order for those things to be done, you have to follow a certain amount of tasks. So we've talked about temperament and we've talked about influence. So let's begin to explore the DISC survey or the DISC personality assessment. So the terms personality and temperament are almost always synonymous to most people. When we use these terms, we are actually referring to the predictable patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So there's a slew of theories, y'all, about personality types. I mean, there's a million of them, and I've probably taken them all. The one that I like the best is the DISC model. It's one of my favorites. And the reason why it's one of my favorites is that it is simple to understand, amen, easy to remember, and extremely practical to apply. So when we're looking at this quadrant, at the top of the quadrant, it says fast-paced. When you think of fast-paced, think extrovert, okay? So if you're an extrovert, then you're considered to be either a D or an I. Those are the more extrovert personalities. At the bottom is more introverted, which means moderate pace. Notice I didn't say slow pace, moderate pace. So if you identify with being a C or an S, you are more of an introverted personality. So that's the first sides of the quadrant. That's the top and the bottom. Again, the top is extrovert, the bottom is introvert. But then the quadrants are broken out from the left to the right. So if you look on the right-hand side, it says people. That means that folks that are on that right side of the quadrant, the I's and the S's, those are folks that are more people-oriented. If you look on the left side of the quadrant, you will see task. So those folks on that side of the quadrant are more task-oriented with a D or a C. So again, left side, task-oriented, right side, people-oriented. Top of the charts, extrovert, bottom, introvert. Then you will see within each of those quadrants, I have a D, an I, an S, and a C. That is what DISC stands for. So the D stands for dominance, direct, results-oriented, firm, strong-willed, and forceful. That is called the D personality style or communication style, which is dominant or direct. I is influence. That means outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, high-spirited, and lively. So let's take it a step further. D's are extroverts and they're task-oriented. So they're extroverts and task-oriented. I's are extroverts and people-oriented. And then we have our S's, which stands for steadiness, and they're patient, even-tempered, accommodating, tactful, and humble. S's are people-oriented and introverted. People-oriented and introverted. And then we have our C's, and C stands for conscientiousness. So C's are generally analytical, reserved, practice, private, and systematic. So C's are introverts and task-oriented. So that's giving you a small overview of what we look for within the DISC assessment, personality assessment, and how we fit it to communication styles. So let's break them down even further and talk about each type of behavior or personality styles. So we're going to talk a little bit about the D-type behavior to start. So a few things to remember about D's. The basic motivation for personality type D are challenge and control. So remember, these are people whose personalities are active or extroverts and task-oriented. Their desires within the D-type behavior, they don't like a lot. They want to have freedom from control. So they don't want you to control them, but yet they want to control whatever's going on. Also with D's, they love or desire authority. They love to have varied activities. So a D is perfectly fine having to do one thing on Monday, and then they can do something else on Tuesday and something else on Wednesday. They like the varied activities. Also, they love a difficult assignment because that gives them time to shine. Also, these look for opportunities for advancement. They love those. So if you are a personality type of a D, to explain to your team, you like to advance. So if you're talking with Dr. McCrae, you're like, I want to do this now. I'm ready for more responsibility. Also, D's love to have a choice. They don't like ultimatums. The reason why D's like to have a choice is that gives them some sort of control over the situation. So if I'm communicating with a D, I will give them 2 to 3 options of what I'm looking for. I just can't say you have to do this or don't do it at all. A D will close up shop, and they'll tell you they're going to close up shop and walk away. Also, D's respond better or best to a leader who provides direct answers. So, story time with Sister Paula. I happened to, when I was at Liberty Mutual, I had a manager that was a D personality, and she was direct answers. You get straight to the point. Well, I like a little relationship with that. So I would send her emails and be like, hi, hope all is well, da 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 da. And then I would, have my ask. She never read, or she just, deleted all my emails and everything. And one day I asked her why, because I was having to repeat myself in a meeting. And she was like, I can't do that flowery stuff. If you want an answer out of me, she goes, you don't even have to say hi to me. You can just put, I need, ... Or if she asked me a question, she would just like take away the fluff and just give me the answer, yes or no. That is how you respond best. That's how a leader responds best to a leader. D's respond best like that. You may have D-type personalities on your actual ministry team. And these are people that are like, they think your meetings are too long. They think church is too long. They just like to get in, get out. Okay? They also work best with leaders who stick to the task, gets to the point, provides them a little bit of pressure, and then allows freedom for personal accomplishments. Now, a few things a D needs to learn within the behavior is that they need people. You can't be so task-oriented that you forget that you need to lean on other people. So D's sometimes tend to take over everything. They do it from start to finish. You need to have people with you. Also, understanding that relaxation is not a crime. It's okay to take some time away. It's okay to steal away and have your Sabbath. All of that is still allowed for you. So that's a little bit about the D's. Also with that, everyone has a boss. That is something for D's to constantly be aware of. You are not the end-all be-all. There is somebody above you. So therefore, it's important for them to have sensitivity to people's feelings is extremely wise, because that will help them within their communication style and also help people to understand them. Next, we have the I-type behaviors. These people, remember, are extroverted and people-oriented. So the basic motivation for an I-type behavior is recognition and approval. These are our people pleasers. They desire prestige. They like a friendly relationship. They can't do details. I's get overwhelmed by details. Details stress them out. So if I'm an I and I come to your meeting and you have like all these bullet points on your paper and all these things that you want done, that is overwhelming to an I. Also, they want opportunities to help others and to motivate others. That is important for them. So if you are seeking out folks and you're in greeter ministry or usher ministry, I's would be perfect for you because they love to motivate and help others. Also, they like to have a chance to verbalize their ideas. So I's are the ones that are asking for time on your schedule so that they can talk about their fabulous idea. And their ideas are out there. They are out of the box thinkers. Now, I's respond best to leaders who are fair and also a friend. So I's are typically people who like to attend churches where they can make a friend with their pastor. So you don't see a lot of times a lot of I's going to mega churches because they like to be able to have that personal relationship with their pastor. Also with that, they respond best to social involvement. Recognition of ability. So they like their name called. When they do something awesome, they want their name called and will question why you didn't call their name. Also, they like for you to offer rewards for risk taking. So I's don't mind taking a risk and getting out there and looking silly while they do it. You know, they're the ones where if you need an announcement made, they come running up there. They are totally okay with that. They have zero problems with that. Now with I's, a few things that I's need to learn is, first off, time must be managed. So I's have difficult time management. Those are folks that may be late to a meeting, or they may totally forget about a meeting, or you may give them a project and they're just like, they'll meet the deadline. So you have to be clear on deadlines with I's, but also if you are an I and you're communicating, you need to have somebody on your team to help keep you honest on the times. Also, they need to understand deadlines are important. Remember, I's don't care. They don't care about your agenda. They care about having that relationship. So they can have a party all they want to, but you have to kind of form those deadlines for them and say, okay, we're in here and now we're going to shift to this. Also, I's need to learn that too much optimism can be dangerous. You cannot have your head in the clouds all your life and expect it to be okay. You have to have come down a little bit, because that will help you to be more humble for the I. Also, being responsible is more important than being popular. I'm going to say it again. I's tend to be people pleasers. They want to see you smile. They want to see you nod. That is important to them. And then I's will need to learn how listening better will improve their own influence. So I's don't listen, remember, because they don't get the details. It doesn't make sense to them. So therefore, having them listen better will improve their ability as a leader. All right, so let's move along and talk about S. So remember, S-type behaviors are in the lower right-hand quadrant. That means they are introverted and people-oriented. So the basic motivation for S-types are stability and support. These are your people that are what I like to call the steady eddies. They are who they are. They are what they are. They desire areas of specialization. So S's love to be able to have their thing, and that is their thing. They don't have to do anything else but this thing. Also, they like to have established work patterns. So when you're communicating with an S, it's important that you tell them this works, this has traditionally worked, and they will be okay with it. Work patterns are important to them. You can't have meetings every Tuesday and then turn around and say, oh, we're going to meet on Thursday instead. S's, that drives them absolutely wild. But remember, because they are introverted, they will never tell you. Conflict averse. That's all I can say. S-type behaviors like a security of the situation, and they love consistent and familiar environments. Back in the day when I first got into management, I read this book called Who Moved My Cheese? And S-type behaviors would highly benefit from reading that book, because change is not a bad thing. I don't want to say this. It's the getting used to it. So you have to allow them, S's, a moment to kind of grieve the way they did it before, and then be on board for what is changing. Now, S-type behaviors respond best to leaders who are relaxed and friendly. Again, they're people-oriented. So they love relationship with higher people than them, like with their pastor, with a manager. That's important to them. Also, you got to give them some time to adjust to the changes, not take it personally, and just think of it as time for them to be able to do it. They want to work at their own pace. So if you allow them to work at that pace, that is beautiful for an S. And also, they love it when you give them personal support. So an S is not one that will say don't like emails or text messages that say good job. They want to know specifically what it is that you are supporting or what you're proud of. A few things S-type behaviors need to learn is that Change provides opportunity. Change is not a bad thing. Change is an awesome thing. And sometimes things need to change in order for opportunity to present themselves. They also have to understand that friendship isn't everything. So when I say that, what I mean is that S's are people-oriented, and so they're still people pleasers. And they may hold on to friendships, relationships, etc. forever because it's consistent and it's something familiar. So friendship isn't everything. Sometimes friends break up, and that's okay. Discipline is good. S's are laid back, conflict averse. So they don't really think about discipline. They think discipline is putting rules on people and being mean. And so I think about this in the aspect of, I know we had Minister Nathan, I think his name was, that came and spoke about psychology and being a counselor and everything. And he talked about discipline versus punishment. And S's sometimes get those lines blurred between discipline and punishment. They think discipline is punishment, and it is not. And so discipline is actually a good thing. And then also S's would benefit from understanding that boldness and taking risks, hey, it's sometimes part of the game and necessary. And now, last but not least, let's take a look at the C-type behaviors. So C's are introverted and task-oriented. So their basic motivation is quality and correctness. Let me tell you, I'm just going to be transparent. My daddy, Michael Cade, he is a C all the way. I remember growing up, I would get a toy or something, and I would just bust open and go for what I know, trying to figure it out. My daddy, he reads the instructions. He tells you where to read it in the book, everything. Like when he gets a new car, he puts the book in his room and he reads the book to find out everything that goes on with the car. Me, on the other hand, I'm just going to jump in the car, and when I need something, I'm just going to figure it out on my own. I don't need no book. I don't want to read that right now. So desires from the C-type behaviors, they like clearly defined tasks. They do not work in the gray. And that's okay. They like to have their role clearly defined, and they can say, this is my role. They also love details. So let me just tell you, C's stress I's out, so that you can probably guess what my personality type is based off of my stories. So C's stress I's out, and then I's stress C's out more than you know, but again, a C is introverted, so they'll never say. Also, C's like limited risks. They're not the ones that are going to step out there and say, hey, let's do this. No. They're going to be more analytical and calculating behind it. They also like tasks that require precision and planning and time to think. If you were doing a presentation, a C would be a perfect person to look over your presentation to tell you where your typos are. And also, if a C sees a typo in a presentation, they won't listen to anything else out of that presentation because of that typo. Now, C's respond best to leaders who provide reassurance, spells out detailed operating procedures, so they have to know step 1 is this, step 2 is this, and then step 2, if I do this, I'll go here, but if I don't do this, it goes here. Also, they love providing resources or having resources to do tasks correctly. So you can't just give them something to do without anything stating this is where you go if you have questions. That is the best way to look at C-type behavior. Also, they like or respond best to leaders that listen to their suggestions. Because they have suggestions, and because they're still introverted, they want you to listen to that. Now, with C-type behavior, a few things that they will need to know is that total support is not always possible. So with C, sometimes you have to encourage them to just take the jump. They sometimes will be paralyzed by information or frozen in space. And what I mean by that, they won't make a decision until they have every piece of information. And sometimes you have to make a decision by Monday. And they are Monday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon still I don't have all the information yet, but we need to move forward. So C's will understand is that total support is not always possible. Explanation is not everything. Most C's have never heard the fact that the word no is a complete sentence. They want to know why, where, what, how, what you did, what you didn't do. And I'm just like, the answer is no. Also, C's need to learn that deadlines must be met. Now, they are also a little bit lax on deadlines. The reason being is that they're lax on deadlines, not because they don't want to do it, but because they're trying to gather all the things to be able to do it. And C's can be a bit pessimistic. And so it's important for them to learn that more optimism will lead to greater success. And so my dad falls into that trap a lot. And I say, you're being a Debbie Downer. And I'll say, where's your faith? And he's like, no, I keep it real. You have to keep it real. That is a favorite phrase of a C, keeping it real. But sometimes so having those faith goggles can be difficult for them sometimes. But here's the thing. An I needs a C because an I does not have, sometimes you don't have infinite pockets to be able to fund stuff. So you get a C to help you keep you grounded. Like, yeah, Paula, you don't need a chandelier. You can get that's $4,000. You can get you a nice ceiling fan for $40 that gives you the exact same amount of light. So there you go. So now that we've talked about D, dominant, I, influencing, S, steady, and C, correctness or conscientiousness, let's talk a little bit more about your personality graphs. So when you take the assessment and you've already been sent the information, you click on the link, you put in your registration code, and you answer those questions. Now, what I need you to do and keep in mind is that you want to answer these questions exactly how they're worded in your true self. I don't want you making up anything. And the thing about it is the test will be able to tell if you're making something up. It's kind of interesting how it's able to do that. So you want to look at your true, authentic self. After you do that, you can download your report. Within your report, you will have two graphs. The first graph is titled, "This is Expected of Me." So this particular graph demonstrates how you think people expect you to behave. So this is your normal, guarded, and masked behavior. So I call it shifting. You may have a behavior when you're at work or in front of people, but you may have another kind of behavior behind closed doors. So when you look at "This is expected of me," this is your response to how you think people expect you to behave. This is your normal, guarded, and masked behavior. The second graph is "This is me." And this is your response to how you feel and think under pressure. So this is how you really feel and really think inside. So this is your normal, unguarded, and unmasked behavior, how you really are behind closed doors. So your uniquely you personality profile contains basic insights on how you tend to think, feel, and act from a DISC temperament type perspective. Now, if these two graphs are generally different, so let's say that "This is expected of me," you are a D, but "This is me," you are an S, so on completely different sides of the continuum, then what that means is that you're just simply revealing something contrasting about your behavior. You may be saying that you think people want you to behave one way in public, but you sometimes feel you should respond in a different way in private. So in other words, if you have a specific high type in graph 1 and the same type low in graph 2, you believe that people expect you to be one way in public, but not that way in private. Now, you also may be revealing that you feel that people expect you to behave one way among fellow employees and associates at work or publicly outside. And then your more personal and familiar environments, you tend to behave either at home or under pressure among your closest friends and relatives in more familiar environments. So graph 1 is looking at more of your fellow employee and associates at work or publicly. Graph 2 are familiar in environments. Keep in mind, that graph 1 is behavior expected of you when you have your guard up and mask on. We usually find that within your place of employment or in casual environments. And then graph 2, that is the real you, letting your hair down, dropping your guard, taking your mask off. And again, we usually see that at home or among those you know best in more familiar environments. So when both graphs are different, you are either struggling with your motivation and feelings, or you are aware of your challenges and perhaps handling them well. Having a different configuration in your two graphs is common. I'm just going to say that again. It is very, very common and can be very enlightening. It may be a sign that you are mature and capable of controlling your inner feelings or natural thoughts, or it could mean that you are not even aware of what struggles are within you. Now, understanding and adjusting your thoughts, feelings, and actions using these insights can be very productive and wise for you. So I want to encourage you to review and study your two graphs, keeping in mind differences and similarities. Then learn how to control your motivations rather than letting them control you. That is very, very important. Now, some of you may have the same. You may be a high I on this is expected of me and a high I on this is me. And that's perfectly fine too. What you see is what you get, no matter where you see me. So that is cool too. Again, y'all, there's nothing perfect. There's nothing you're striving for. There's nothing that's better than the other one. It just simply is. So next steps. You have received a link from me for your assessment. You want to answer how you truly feel, not how you wish you felt. It's going to take you about 15 minutes to complete the assessment. I want you to make sure you're in a quiet space. Also, I would recommend not doing it on your phone, maybe getting yourself a tablet or a laptop or a desktop computer to be able to complete it, because that will help you to kind of see your answers a little bit differently. Also, I can't reiterate this enough. Miss Paula, Sister Paula is not trying to get in your head. Please, I don't even like getting in my own head, okay? This is just helping you to understand your behavior and temperament to be able to be a better leader and be a better communicator. This will really, really help you. After you take the assessment, within that email, you have a link to my calendar where you can sign up for some time to go over your results. Also, for folks that like the youth ministry that have 3 leaders, I'll be gathering all 3 of you or all 4 of you or both of you if you are doing a co-leader situation to kind of talk through how you can communicate better as a team utilizing the personality profiles. All right, my friends. That is it. I want to thank you all for taking some time in our webinar today. I really, really appreciate it. Here we have on this page my information. So again, I'm Sister Paula Glover. My telephone number is 317-914-8621. Keep in mind, Sis is an introvert a little bit, so I'm a high I and a high S. So sometimes I don't answer the phone on unknown numbers, but simply send me a text and say, Sister Paula, I'm getting ready to call you, and I'll be more than happy to pick up the phone. You can also email me at pauladglover@gmail.com. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. And again, we'll have another one here in a couple of days talking about spiritual gifts. Everyone have an excellent day. Bye now.